All right, here we are, guys. A mini version of the American Soccer Council. We'll call this American Soccer Council Light.
Not
Hopefully
with our
people won't
weight.
boycott us. But we're missing Tack and we're missing Brett. Both of them weren't available today, but that's okay. We've done this a couple of times, usually after camps, to kind of, talk, because people hear from me and Tack a lot on this channel. But, getting Straight Red and Adam, I know you're not a YouTuber, but, people seem to like your opinions and also your basketball references. And so, and your apparent nearness genetically to Ethan Horvath, which I think is still under some debate.
The over-under I heard is 2.5 for basketball references for me tonight on this show.
Okay.
I'll take the over.
2.5, I'll take 2.5.
Yeah, take the over.
We do need a DNA test on that Horvath thing, though.
Yeah, that Horvath thing is still under, for all we know, you're a cousin at least. That's what I'm thinking. At least a cousin. Maybe not quite an older brother, but a cousin for sure.
My secret burner is like that one account out there really pushing for Horvath hard, so.
Oh, really? I've never seen this account.
No, I'm just joking.
Oh, okay.
that doesn't exist.
So yeah, basically just kind of look after, it's a kind of an interesting time to do this because it's after the friendlies, two difficult games, which I don't remember any window where we played friendlies this tough. But before Copa America. And I kind of want to start off with this. Has our opinion changed about this team and about Gregg after these two friendlies, or is it largely the same? And either way, whatever your answer is, why? Who wants to start?
I guess I'll start. My opinion about Gregg still hasn't totally changed. I still think in general, he's still stubborn. I still think he's very arrogant. I still think he wants to play non-pragmatic soccer unless his back is against the wall, unless he's at the World Cup playing England or apparently now Brazil. Like, this is the first time I feel like he game planned, because they're constantly talking about both the players and Gregg. We don't really prepare for the other team. We focus on us and what we're going to do. Well, it's pretty obvious in this game we stopped doing that a little and decided, we're going to do some things that might make it harder for Brazil to score. It was a change. And so, but I think as soon as he gets the chance, he's just going to go back to doing the same thing again. That would be my guess. So my opinion on Gregg hasn't really changed. I think the only thing that is now that I see it clearly is that he just refuses to do and game plan for the opponents. And that's kind of a stubborn ass thing to do. The players I still believe in, although, the effort sometimes isn't there and their consistency isn't there. And so that's going to be the same too.
Yeah, not much has changed. I mean, my biggest question mark a couple months ago, I think when we talked last, was consistency with this coach, this group under this coach. And it's like, what are we going to see? I put a big tweet out about it. And it's like, hey, if you go back in the Berhalter era, all you kind of see is like, some brief spikes followed by dips and confusion. And most of the spikes, let's just be honest, most of the spikes are wins against one team who is very much proving to be pretty average on the world stage. So those spikes aren't even like that, in retrospect, those aren't even that promising, in my opinion, right? They mean way less looking back now than they did in the moments, right? So a lot of us have started looking at like, well, where are these benchmarks that we're hitting to show that we're on track to do something in 2026 meaningful? And Colombia was, I thought, a really important game because, and a lot of people are poo-pooing, it's a friendly, don't take friendlies serious. Like, I agree, don't take friendlies serious a year after the World Cup when it's a money grab. These teams pre-Copa are trying. I'm sorry. Like, did we get absolutely 100% of Brazil? No, but like, we got a Brazil that was trying. They certainly weren't trotting out a second unit and certainly weren't not trying to score. So we got a good version of Brazil. We got I thought a really motivated version of Colombia. And Pete, what I thought we saw much of the same that we've seen under Gregg, which is Jekyll and Hyde. Who are we getting night in and night out? And that is not a good feeling going into Bolivia and Panama, right? And I know we're going to kind of touch on that and talk on that a little bit more, but like, my feeling's not the same because my emotion and my feel going into those games, I'm like, I don't know.
Adam, this is where you and I are going to disagree with Pete because I don't think he feels we got the best of Brazil. No, as you said, I don't think we did either. I think we got 90%. I also think it was hot as hell and humid. And nobody by the end of the game was giving up. But, you take that foul on Pulisic and you saw how upset the Brazilian players were about that foul outside the box. Probably was inside the box. But neither here nor there. They argued about that for 5 minutes. They weren't there to lose. They're definitely there to win, but obviously you're going to see a better Brazil at an actual real tournament. But I think what they did give us was enough. I think they were there to win.
We would have saw if that was a 1-1 game in a real knockout, we would have saw more effort. I totally agree with that. I kind of probably hyped it up a little bit too much in the moment. Rewatching it, certainly it wasn't like them all out, right? But it wasn't them. I don't know if you remember, we played them in a friendly after the 2018 World Cup. I don't know if you remember. And it was literally just them, like, that was sleepwalking friendly there to collect a check Brazil, my point is this wasn't that, I don't think we can extrapolate this and be like, well, with that performance, we're, ready to go to the semifinals of the World Cup. No, but certainly there were some positives to gain from it, but inconsistency, boys, inconsistency.
Well, with the players and Gregg, both.
So, yeah, I'll address the Brazil point real quick. It's not that I think they didn't care, right? They trotted out their A lineup. They wanted to win 100%. I just don't think the intensity was there. Like, I think that was played at 70 or 80% intensity for this Brazil team. I think they looked at that 5-1 result against Colombia and went, Estadios Unidos, just go finish them. But I don't think they took us very seriously, and I don't think they played with an intensity that belied that. That's what I think. We'll see what they look like in the actual competition. Because, by the way, Brazil also has not looked good in competitive games in CONMEBOL, right? They're 6th in World Cup qualifying at the moment. So we might see Colombia top that group and Brazil come. So we may end up meeting Brazil meeting Colombia, I'm sorry, because we get second. Unless we get first and we meet Brazil. There's an argument to be made. You'd almost rather Brazil at this point.
Or right, no, I would. Just to your point there, real quick, I think that Brazil, many of the players on the team know a lot of our players now, like McKennie, Pulisic, Ream, Jedi, just because of the because of the leagues they play in. So I think they took the players seriously, but now whether or not they took the friendly itself, because it's a friendly, nobody goes like 110% in a friendly. It's just not going to happen. Now
that looked a lot like Brazil. To your point, Pete, that looked a lot like the Brazil we've seen the last 2-3 months, though. Like that's my point, right? Is that it just didn't look that different. So maybe it's not the best version of this Brazil team, but we got that Brazil team, in my opinion. We got a pretty close representation of what they've been.
Yeah, and I think to your point about not taking friendly seriously, what I absolutely loved about that game is that we took it really seriously, and we had to, right? Anything less would have been inexcusable, right? I mean, we had to, after that Colombia loss, they had to prove to the fan base that, wait a minute, this is a team to take seriously. Otherwise, some people might have just tuned out for Copa America, to be honest.
Well, and Gregg took it seriously too. So serious, he was willing to throw his usual shtick out the window after about 17 minutes. Yeah. I think he knew his back was to the wall because he doesn't care what any of us say, right? But when everybody else in the mainstream media starts echoing what we're saying and have been saying for years now, then he read that and he's like, my job might be on the line. It's possible. He doesn't know 100%. He's definitely going to be around. I think he probably thought I got a 90% chance, but if I lose this game 5-1, I might be gone. It's possible they just let BJ coach this team through Copa.
Yeah, and just about, my opinion about Gregg has not changed, right? He's still stubborn, he's still inflexible, he's still stick to the 4-3-3. In terms of the tactics that he put out, it's essentially what we saw against England. It wasn't the same 4-4-2, but it was a mid block that can retreat into a low block if they break through that mid block. I think the only thing, it's not so much that it changed for me, but this team proved against Brazil what I think a lot of us have been saying for a long time, that this is a standard we can expect from this team. Because if they played every game with that level of intensity and aggression and hunger, I don't think we'd be getting the performances and the results that we have been getting. I don't think so.
Right.
And, after the Colombia loss, the Gregg Simps were telling us, well, this team just doesn't have the ability to play against these teams. You're overrating the team. Don't expect anything against the bigger teams. And then we went on Brazil and did the exact opposite. It's like, yes, see, when we play with a smart tactical game plan, when we play with hunger and intensity and aggression, when we go out there and fight for the shirt and fight for the crest, we can compete with some of these big teams and maybe occasionally get a result. And I think that's really what most fans are asking for. No one's asking for us to win Copa America or the World Cup. That would be unrealistic. Asking for us to show that we can compete with the big teams and occasionally get a result is doable. Swatting aside the minnows on a regular basis, home and away, very doable. Looking competent and efficient against the teams that have similar talent to ours, also very doable. And we've rarely seen that with this team. So nothing has changed, in my opinion, about this team, except I feel justified in what a lot of us have been saying now, that this team can play at a certain level, and they showed it. We just wish they would do it more often.
Yep, that's it. Good
Speaking
summary.
of blame and credit, right? Another discussion point that went around was, who do you blame for results that are poor and performances that are poor, and vice versa? Who do you give credit to? Is how much of this is on Gregg and how much of this is on the players? I think most reasonable people would say both, right? The question would be how much and why. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts.
I'm not going to put a percentage on it. I'm just going to give you my experience from coaching. And I know, Pete, you've coached some. And Derek, have you coached at all? Have you done any coaching?
Yeah.
Right. So here's what I learned in coaching, right? Early in my coaching days, when we would lose and have bad stretches, I would blame the players and I don't have good enough players. My players aren't disciplined. My players aren't X, Y, Z, right? And I remember getting on the phone with one of my coaching mentors. I was like a 25-year-old college head coach. Didn't know what the hell I was doing. Get on the phone with my college mentor, my coaching mentors, first couple of years. And I'm telling them all this, Adam, all that's a reflection. Don't mean to be mean. All that's a reflection of you. It's all a reflection of you. Mm-hmm. And they weren't saying that no players would ever go out of line, right? But when I was telling him the wholesale problems with our team, he was like, you need to look internal. You need to figure out how you can coach that stuff better. And that's my biggest thing, right? Of course, there's always blame on players, always. But when you have performances like that Colombia performance, or you can go back to a million other performances, in my opinion, right? Jamaica a couple months back, right? When you have those kind of performances and everybody sucks, it is always an indication that you have a couple things that could be wrong. The players are not motivated properly in some way, shape, or form, right? Something's wrong on the team. They don't like each other. They don't like the coach. That could be one answer. Two, they don't understand the system they're in, and they're confused. And therefore, it looks like a lack of effort, but it's really just confusion, right? Three, the big errors you continually see, in that Colombia game, zone 14 just open over and over and over again for Colombia. And people are like, well, Gio's not covering it. And this guy, it's guys, everybody can't be wrong at one time. Something is wrong tactically in how he's relaying the message of what he wants them to do. I'm sure Gregg doesn't want that space open, right? I'm also sure the players aren't trying to leave that space open, but they are, right? And when you have wholesale big tactical things wrong, that falls on the coach. If all of your players are 80, 90%, it seems like, man, they all look off. They're all not giving their best or off. To me, that's on the coach, right? Now, can players take some more onus and play a little harder? I think almost always. But to me, I use this on Twitter, and I don't know if it's the best example, but it's if you have a struggling school district, right, somewhere, and it's man, all of these kids are underperforming on standardized testing. It's not well, all the kids aren't trying hard. All the kids suck. It's no, something's wrong. There is a systemic issue here with how we're teaching, what the kids are getting at home. Something's wrong, right? Systemically. And that's what I've seen in the USMNT is systemically, and I can't put my finger on it. I'm not in the locker room. Something is wrong systemically, and the coach is in charge of that. So to me, it falls way more on the coach than the players.
You're right I like the teaching metaphor because I was a teacher. There are old school teachers who would say, well, I taught it. If they didn't learn it, that's their problem, right? That's not the way you coach or you teach. I mean, you have to make sure, well, they used to call it, I guess, during the political era, no child left behind. But what stemmed out of that, or one of the philosophies, was that everyone was capable of at least, a bottom line performance level. But if your class wasn't about making sure all your students learned, and you were just teaching and then going home every day, and who cares who learned what? That's just bad teaching. And I think there's a little of that going on with Gregg. I do think in soccer, a bad manager can have a heavily weighted effect on a team by setting up the team wrong, not giving the proper instructions, or in some cases, giving too many instructions that are overcomplicated, overbearing, and in some cases, if you're Joe Scally, up until recently, confusing. And you're not allowed to play freely. And there were only basic rules when I played soccer. Right back goes up, left back holds. Center midfielder goes up. One of the center midfielders has to hold. It was so basic, but that's all we needed. You set us up in a formation. We generally know how to play together. You don't need to go out on the field before the games and in all the practices and go, I want you to form a triangle here. And then after this triangle, I want you to shift into this triangle here. And then we're going to shift into that triangle. And then when we get it down to the final third, we're going to bounce it around the shoehorn for a while until we find an opening. We're going to try to misplace the defense. We're going to try to shift them into, zones where they're vulnerable. Well, that's odd because that never seems to work against Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. So maybe there's a different solution, Gregg, called quick transitions. Quicker transitions once you gain possession. So it is some of that is the philosophy of the coach, and the coach, his own demeanor is reflected in the team very often, which is why you saw such grit out of those 2002 teams, because Bruce is a no crap kind of dude. He's a rough around the edges guy, and that was reflected in that team. And this team often looks soft because Gregg is soft.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there are a lot of people who watch the U.S. men's national team who maybe watch MLS and aren't really paying attention to the world of soccer. And some of those people are people that go, what are you talking about with this whole thing? It's like, this is true everywhere. Look at Atletico Madrid plays the way that Diego Simeone is. Amen. Manchester City plays the way that Pep Guardiola is, right? Very defensive teams like Anthony Pulis' Stoke City was infamous for playing the way that Anthony Pulis is. Like Alex Ferguson's team always played the way that his personality is. This isn't new in soccer. This isn't an idea that a few USMNT guys came up with and are trying to propagate to the fan base. This is, you know what I mean? Like this is true across the world of soccer. And I'm not really, tuned into a bunch of other sports, but I'm sure it's true in other sports as well.
Absolutely. That's why
for example.
Or you see how many coaches hockey teams go through in a season. NHL is notorious for this. And I can tell you the way teams play are reflected in, they go through too many, but yes, if it's not clicking with the players, there's something not clicking between the players and the coach. They just get id of them. Gone. You're out.
The weirdest narratives out there for me that I interact with, I don't know if you guys agree with this, is like these people that will get into this, run of like conversation with me, and they're like, these players aren't better than this. You guys just need to face that. And it's like, well, okay, what do you want us to do? Just like keep the same manager then? Like after the Colombia performance, it seemed like a lot of people, it wasn't just one or two, were like, this is the best we are going to expect out of these guys. I don't know what you guys are thinking. This is a bad team. And Pete, you kind of talked about that and how we answered in the Brazil game. And it's like, well, what are you guys talking about? Like, check it. But like, what I don't understand is it's like, if you guys think that this is the best anyone can get out of this team, then let's just try something else at that point, right? Like, and to the point that a lot of people make, which is, well, it's not going to help that much. Like you see across sports, you see it in soccer. If you're just a soccer person, you see it in soccer all the time. A different manager will take the same group and in the same season get drastically different results, right? Because they make changes that are sensible. They start utilizing players better. They motivate the group in a different way. There's a lot of reasons why it happens, right? And that's the kind of thing, like, the inconsistency that we see out of USMNT and the confusion we see out of the players and the lack of heart and grit or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, to me, that's symptomatic of a lot of other things, not lack of heart and grit. It's all emblematic of leadership, right? Like, that's leadership. Mm-hmm. And if you want different results, you're going to need different leadership, right? And like, we have Copa now. Let's see what happens. We're coming off a good result. Can we string together, right, 4 or 5? And it doesn't even mean winning Copa for me. It just means string together 4 or 5 results where we feel really good after the game. And that might be a tie against Uruguay, right? But I can tell you this, it's not going to be winning at the death against Bolivia, because that's regression, guys. Like, that's regression, right? We need to go take care of business against these 2 teams, and we need to put up that kind of performance against Uruguay. And now all of a sudden you got 4 in a row. And that's what I would need to see to even consider, in my eyes, keeping this manager for the future.
You know what I tell those half-wits? I was like, go wiki the 2002 roster and go tell me all the great teams all those players played for. None of them played for any great teams. And yet Bruce was able to take what was on paper that's a mediocre ass team out of the group stage, a really tough group, and then a couple more rounds in to the knockout stages.
Portugal.
That's right.
In the group stage, 3-2. And that was Portugal with Luis Figo. That
Yes.
was a fearsome Portugal, right? And then they beat a very good Mexico, right, in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
And were bad handball call away from going to a semifinal with South Korea against Germany.
Exactly.
So, yeah. And just quickly about the other point that we talk about, it being, the overcomplicated instructions. Again, some people have this idea that this is a fan theory. It is not. Multiple players have talked about this.
Yes.
Pepe alluded to it under Anthony Hudson, how much more freedom they have to play. Joe Scally alluded it when, we were looking for a new coach by saying we need to get a coach that understands this isn't club soccer. Eric Williamson didn't just allude to it. He came out and said Gregg's system is very, very complicated to understand. Christian Roldan said the same thing. I think they were talking about new players in camp, and he was saying, Gregg's system is tough to learn. It's going to take a lot of camps to learn it.
Balogun said it too, by the way. Balogun also said, I haven't figured out how to work myself into the system yet. Like, if it shouldn't be that complicated. Even Gregg said it. We haven't figured out how to workflow into the system yet. He said it himself.
Right. So this is multiple players and coaches saying this. This isn't the QSMNT theory. This isn't fans coming up with whatever. This is something that we are getting from the players and from the coach. And it's clearly not working. Go ahead, Adam.
I just wanted to say this. Like, and this is the kind of stuff to me that's really disturbing. And I don't understand how more people aren't disturbed by this kind of stuff. We have a manager who has managed pretty much this same group post-COVID, right? A lot of them before COVID too, but like, this is if you look at the group that we've had together, and I get there have been injuries along the way, it is predominantly guys that have been together for a few years now, right? Mm-hmm. We are, 6 years into a coach's tenure in a system. I know he's reworked it a little bit through the years, and we are so bad in, Derek, you kind of touched on it, in transitions.
Yeah.
Like, how are we so bad in transition soccer moments, right? Everything Colombia and Brazil got against us, transition moments, other than I think the corner kick goal that Colombia scored. But like, all these moments are happening because we look perplexed, confused. I understand how people interpret it as lack of effort. But like, I don't know, are guys really just all lack effort every time there's a transition moment? That's just so hard to believe, right? Like, everyone just isn't playing hard. Like, we can't get back to like a shape that makes sense fast to contain. And we're typically in possession when we turn it over. We're in really weird places, right? Too stretched out with a ton of space in between the defensive and midfield lines.
Right.
That was like, that's honestly the biggest issue I saw in these games, is like, where is everyone? Like, Matt Turner hits that terrible ball, and it's like, where the F is everyone? Like, why don't we have any friggin' support in players? And and you talked on the offensive transitions, Derek. We should be murdering people in offensive transition.
Absolutely.
And we look passive. We look like we want to kick the ball back and, be like, prime Barcelona, like tiki-taka. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, this is a transition-based team. Look at the guys we have. Like, and that troubles me that like 6 years in, we don't have a grasp on transition moments. And I think it's probably because we're so caught up in all these other things that to me, honestly, don't even matter. Just like be really good in transition moments and you could be a really good team, really hard to score on, and you can go get some chances that maybe you shouldn't have.
And actually, the great news was one of the positive things with the Brazil game is we saw a nice handful of actually quick transition moments, and it was rare. And I don't know who decided to do it, because when Gregg was coming pre-game out of the locker room and they interviewed him, he said, well, what we want to do is come out and we want to fight hard, but when we get the ball, we need to possess it. Well, we possessed it all right, but for the first time that I can remember, we actually tried to transition up the field as fast as we possibly could. Not in counter style. I mean, it wasn't that fast, but, it was actually the ball moved from the back to the midfield to the front relatively fast compared to all the other games that I've watched from Gregg. I don't know if the players decided to do that or Gregg was just spouting some nonsense before the game started.
So if we're not good in offensive transitions generally, and we're not good in defensive transitions, we know we're not great at breaking down a low block. Is there anything we are good at?
Well, we showed
consistently no, right? It's like random games where I'm like, wow, we were good at that this game. Like I thought, I'll give a ton of credit. In the second half, I thought that whatever adjustments we made to, I think, defend a little bit deeper, we certainly defended deeper in the second half.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever adjustments he did make from, I think you mentioned it, from like the 20-30 minute mark in the first half on, we were way better. Like we gave up, I thought we were going to lose 5-0 again after the first 30 minutes, right? Yeah. I mean, like, I was like, this is insane, guys. Like we're giving up 3-on-2s to Brazil every 3 minutes.
Did you notice after Turner gave up that goal that we, not a single time after this on a goal kick did we try to play out of the back?
Yeah.
We just said, everybody up. We're just chunking this sucker past midfield and we'll go deal with that, whatever that is. But it's
like every time we see, to me, what's sensible tactical moves for this team, like the England game, we get the Netherlands game. And it's like, what? We're not going to run like some of that back. Like, it's just like, we're doing totally different things. So that's always the interesting part, right? Is like, are we going to go out against Uruguay and try and kind of do what I think Gregg wants to do, right? He's been very vocal about what he wants to do, right? And it's like, cool. That doesn't seem to work against really good teams. I hope he learns from this and goes, okay, I'm going to be more practical. Like, I'm going to be a little bit more practical and go a different direction here.
How about a little humility? Like, the only time we've seen humility is in 2 games, England, Brazil. As you said, in the Netherlands, we just ditched everything we did against England and just went back to saying, you know what, we're going to go chest to chest with those guys and see what happens.
So Uruguay is a whole separate discussion. But before we get to Uruguay, we have to play Bolivia and Panama. And it may get to a point where the Uruguay game doesn't matter all of that much because we might be fully qualified by then. But Panama, I am less worried about because their record of naivete under Thomas Christensen, I think, will play right into our hands. If Panama comes out and tries to attack us, I think that's a sure loss for them. I'm a little more worried about Bolivia because Bolivia is going to probably do something that they are very good at doing and used to do. Good at doing, very used to doing, and that is bunkering for their lives against a better opponent. And we are very bad at breaking down a bunker. Most recently, it was Jamaica. And before that, Trinidad and Tobago, both home and away. Before that, Uzbekistan, right? We didn't score. I don't know if we didn't score or we didn't get a second goal until like 90th minute against Uzbekistan.
Second goal, but it was like 1-0 right? until forever.
Yep.
So, this was a problem last cycle too. It's not just recent. So, how are we feeling about that Bolivia game? I know they're a terrible team right now, like terrible. But so was Trinidad and Tobago, and they held us to a 0-0 draw with 10 men until the 88th minute. How are we feeling about our ability to break down a low block?
I'm nervous that Christensen will actually take some sort of elixir and get a brain and play a low block too against us. And that'll be 2 hard games because what we do and what we are bad at, especially in those games against Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, they were in a bunker, but then they get possession and they're bringing the ball out and then we steal the ball. But instead of saying, okay, before we let them get back into the low block, let's just go get them right now. Let's go get them. No. We turned around and we passed it back to the center backs who diddly-diddlied with it. Then they hit it out to a left back, and then left back hit it back to the center back. By that time, Trinidad and Tobago are back in their low block, you morons. Why? What? Is there no directive to say, hey, quick transitions, once you get possessions, when they're out of the low block, we need to hit them then? But no, we don't get any of that. And hopefully we're learning our lesson, but I haven't seen any evidence of it. I really haven't.
I think the hope is that they'll be get early goals, right? I mean, I don't have much hope that we're going to like play. Low blocks are hard, right? They just are. Like if you watch enough soccer, like Man City gets a low block often in the Premier League versus low table teams.
Half the game,
and they're Man City, so yeah, they break it down. But like you see them struggle some games. Like it's tough. I think it's extra tough when you're not coached particularly well, right? I think that becomes even trickier. So the goal always like, can we just somehow find a goal early, and then the game totally changes. But like, I totally expect one of those games to be 0-0 deep into the game. Like it would shock me if they weren't, right? And to your point, Derek, it would shock me if Panama does come out and play at us, which, I guess they seem to be wanting to do that. That would be very weird because it's a bad way to beat us if you're them.
Smart,
but, I don't know. Are you going to get that lucky goal, right? And if you get that lucky goal, it's a game changer. But we'll see. We'll see if there's any lessons learned. Like we'll see. To me, like how you deploy Gio specifically is really important. And I do think that if you look at, I think Gio checked into that Jamaica game relatively late or second half. I can't remember. And he was a game changer. Like all of a sudden we started generating chances because of his creativity in the middle and his ability to find space in the middle of the field and his ability to connect passes there. That's just different. So where are we going to deploy him? And, are we going to deploy him kind of in this more retracted role that he's been playing, or are we going to let him kind of get up where he's, better? So it's a little bit of like how he deploys the guys. And then I don't know, a lot of pessimism from me, Pete, on that.
Yeah. I mean, just to echo what you were saying, Adam, it's to me, how we're going to use Gio is going to be very crucial to our ability to break down low blocks, because after the World Cup, by the way, Gregg wasn't the first to do this. It was Anthony Hudson who was like, Gio's my 10. And we saw him for a BJ and for Hudson play amazing as a 10. That Nations League, he bossed it, right? That Nations League final. And then Gregg kept him as a 10 for Ghana, and I believe it was
Germany,
right? Mm-hmm. And he looked good in both of those games as a 10. All right, and then Trinidad and Tobago, again, maybe not as good. Although he did have a nice combination with Balogun. But more specifically, that Jamaica game, he comes on, creates chances, 2 beautiful assists, and then Gregg's response in the subsequent 3 games is to play him in a double pivot with a defensive midfielder as far away from the goal as he possibly can, with Weston McKennie now playing as the 10. And I don't understand that. I
would if McKennie gave you something, but he doesn't give you anything. No. He disappears in that position. And that's why, and he disappeared in the Brazil game we just watched. And, I watched this game twice, the second time doing a lot of pausing, taking notes. But the one guy that stands around the most, and I hate to say this, I hate saying this, but it's just true, is Weston McKennie. When we have possession, he seems like you're the 10, dude, moving to open space. What are you doing? Why are you walking? I don't get it.
I know I know he's played a different role for club than what I'm asking him to do. But like I maybe I'm way off here. Maybe I'm unique. I thought he was pretty good as like the more, in the double pivot. I don't know if it was a traditional, but we were playing more double pivoty, with Musa and under BJ. And
no, it was Gio and Musa. McKennie was higher up the field. It was Gio and Musa playing in
under BJ.
Oh, you're talking about BJ.
Yeah. I'm saying like we've seen him do it like a year ago. Like I've seen Wes play this role, connect passes. Like he was playing. That's where he was playing in the World Cup. I mean, he was playing like oftentimes in these like more laid back roles, more defensive roles. He's also a good defender. Like I know he has inconsistent effort and stuff, but like he's a good defender when he turns it on. And like, I think he always shows up for big games. So like, I want him in a more defensive role. I think he's good enough to play that role against like Bolivia and do the job we would need more of like the double pivot or the more laid back 8 to do. And then I think like how creative, going back to your point, right? Or the main question, how creative is Gregg willing to get here? Like, is he going to roll out, Scally at right back? Scally's played well, but like, is Scally the best option against Bolivia at right back? Is there a better alignment there? Can we put a more creative player on the field who can do more? And I'm not even advocating for that, but like, is it just going to be the same old, or are we going to try and mix things up? Mix Gio up. What's the right back position look like? Is Johnny in versus Tyler Adams, or does he roll Tyler Adams out there? Does he have an awareness of what kind of players and what kind of alignments are going to be able to break down a low block? And that's when I see the lineup, that's going to like tell me a lot. I feel like.
Well, I tell you what, if you're going to face a low block, you can't start Balogun. I hate saying that, but Balogun's not going to get on the end of a header in the box because that's what ends up happening when we play against a low block. It's just 1,000 crosses, and you need Sarge in there or Pepe. You need somebody who's over 6'1", and you need somebody with a record of scoring goals with their head or on crosses in general, because that's not Balogun's thing. He's a through the lanes guy. He's a speedster. He's not going to get on the end of headers and hasn't all season. I think he's had 1 goal his whole career off his head, or maybe 2. I might be wrong about that. Or
we could not spam 1,000 crosses into the box,
right?
Because
but that's the thing, Pete. With Gregg, when we play against low block teams, he likes to let the other team get back into the low block, right? We don't play quickly in transition. We gain possession, and so we're constantly playing against the low block all day instead of. When the other team does have the ball and they advance it up the field and they lose it, bam, it's time to go. It's as simple as that. You go now. But we didn't do it. And I was yelling at the TV screen. Brett's like, shh, I got kids. It's like I'm yelling at the screen during the Jamaica game and the Trinidad game. It's so frustrating to watch.
Yeah, it is. Let's move on to what surprised you from this camp, for good or bad. Whether it was a system or a player or anything that stood out to you. And I'll start with this one. I don't want to steal all of yours, but I'll just say Gio's defensive work. Because one of the criticisms that I think has been fairly leveled at Gio is he doesn't do a lot of tracking back. He doesn't always close passing lanes. He doesn't win duels. And my response has generally been that is probably true, but what he offers as a 10, I can overlook some of that because of what he offers as a 10. Now he's not playing as a 10, so he has to do a lot of work. And although he wasn't perfect, I think the effort was there. He helped Joe Scally many times against Vini Jr. in the Brazil game. He won quite a few balls in midfield, and that was good to see. I still think we're hampering him. And I also think that some of his passing against Brazil was a little bit too safe and a little bit too passive. But I can't tell. I think I have an idea, but I can't say for sure. Is that Gio being passive? Or is that Gregg saying, don't try to go for that through ball down the middle when we could lose it and they could come up our throats? Go for the safe pass. Because Gio, like, I have to do this because this is how Gregg wants to play. I don't know. But I was impressed with his defensive work rate. Less impressed, especially against Brazil, with some of his passing. And the safeness and the passivity, if that's a word, of his passing range. Because I know he has better and I know he can do better, and I want to see that.
Right. I think the biggest surprise for me was how bad we were versus Colombia, and then it shouldn't have been a surprise how much better we were against Brazil. Probably that shouldn't be a surprise because we were on the roller coaster, but even though I thought we might play better against Brazil, I didn't think we would tie. I thought we were definitely losing that game. For whatever reason, I thought we were going to lose it. We got the tie. But some of the things within the game versus Brazil surprised me. I saw a kind of really lackluster performance, no guts, no grits. I saw a Ream in game 1 who looked out of sorts, then flipped it and was like a freaking wizard in the second half. And then the biggest change that we made, and, this is a statistic people don't look at, in the whole game versus Colombia, we committed 4 fouls. 4. That's a sign of a passive team. Against Brazil, we out-fouled Brazil. We had 14 fouls. Colombia out-fouled us like 9-4, 4 fouls? We got 4 fouls the whole game? If that's all you get, then you're not trying. It's because somebody needs to, they're told to be stepped on, as you say, right? Yeah. That's not stepping on anybody's toes versus Colombia. That shows a team that's like not there to be a physical presence, to let the other team know that they're there to throw some elbows if needed. And in the Brazil game, 14 fouls is more like what I want to see. Not stupid ones, but ones that show, hey, we're here to play. That's it. That's all I want to see. So that was a big surprise to me because I don't think we've been that physical for a long time against anybody.
There are a couple things that were surprising to me. I think the biggest one, and I'd push back on a little bit of your Tim Ream hate, because to me, what was surprising is how vital in this window Tim Ream was. Remember, Tim Ream got subbed off before we let up all those goals.
That's true.
And I don't think it was a great performance by everyone before the goals. Personally, it was just kind of lackluster, but right. It was a nightmare after, right? And like he and Gio, right? And that is the thing, right? When Gio, there's a couple other key guys, Pulisic, leave the field, our composure with the ball totally changes. So and that's what people I think get wrong about Gio, right? Well, you got to take him off if you need to defend. Actually, no, you need more composure on the ball. You need to not be as iffy with the ball at your feet, and you need to make better decisions. Sometimes the decision is to boot it long. That's fine when you're up by a goal with 5 minutes left, but you need to make good decisions. Old man Ream, though, man, if you told me 4 years ago, and maybe it's just a big surprise, Pete, when I'm thinking big picture, told me 4 years ago Tim Ream was going to be starting Copa and be a key figure, in our ability to potentially compete there, I would have called you absolutely nuts. He was really good against Brazil. I mean, he was. Yep. I mean, we played out of the back against them, man. As much
apart from getting burned by Vini Jr. in transition, right? Which he's slow. And that, by the way,
you can't leave him on islands. You can't and that's where tactically what we do oftentimes is stupid. And to me, it's more of a tactical thing. But I don't think we have any center backs that we can stretch the game and allow 3v3s with our center backs against Brazil. Sure, Ream probably gets beat more. If there's 100 transitions, Ream will get beat more than a lot of other guys. But all of our guys are getting beat at a really high clip, in my opinion.
Look, 100%. That was more a comment on the tactics than on Ream
sure.
himself. If you're forcing Tim Ream to defend on the turn, and by the way, the mid block is a high line because that line is so high, it's about 20 yards away from the front line. It's still a very high line, and that is my worry. If we play that against a big team, although it did work because Brazil tried to play through you, but I can see Bielsa, not just Colombia, anyone just going, okay, fine, we'll go in behind. No problem.
I saw your tweet on that, and I thought that was really good. I hadn't, it's funny, I'd watched the game. I hadn't watched it back. But when I watched it back, I was kind of just noting that because I saw your tweet about that. And I was like, oh, wow, yeah, that is exposable, right? I'm not a tactical genius. If you're a tactical genius, you're going to be looking at that and going, I got some stuff for that, right? We got a couple ways that we're going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, that was a highest line mid block you can play. Can I just?
We got to give Scally some props on the surprise though too.
Absolutely, I was hoping one of you would. That's why we cover it.
I feel like it's been out there so much. I wanted to go in a different direction, but I think we should just say it so people don't think we're crazy. Joe Scally probably is the biggest surprise from the camp. I think it was a total wild card what we were going to get, and he held up. He held up, and he was involved in some okay attacking moments against Brazil. He did the job. I'm excited. Joe Scally's 21. I feel like he's been around in our brains for 4 years now, so it seems like he's old, but the dude's still young, man. He could develop into a player that's different than what he is now. He could be good.
That's a guy to me that saw and read a lot of Twitter stuff or heard a lot of behind the scenes talk about, especially in every presser leading up to this game, 8 players, 2 coaches, the question constantly about who's going to replace Dest. The name Scally never came up out of anyone's lips. The word Joe Scally. And if I'm Joe Scally, I'm in camp and I'm going, what the f- is going on here? I thought I was the def number 2 behind Dest. Nobody even wants to talk about me. He came out with an attitude, dude. That's the one thing I saw from him was just chip on my shoulder. I'm going to ease people up. I'm going to show them how good I am. And, we didn't get much offense against Colombia, but the few times we got offense from him versus Brazil, that's a bonus. So I like the grit. I gained a new respect for him because I've watched him play Gladbach all season, and it's been a roller coaster. And I haven't seen that sort of fire. I saw it in those 2 games. I saw fire from Scally.
And then Gregg said afterwards that with these performances, he earned a spot on the roster, which I thought was bizarre.
That is really weird.
It's like, wait, he was on the roster and has been in every roster that he's been healthy for. And then Gregg's like, he came in and earned a spot on the roster. And like, it's one thing to say earn a spot in the starting lineup, but the roster, like, dude, this guy's been in every I mean, don't forget, Scally was left out for Brooks Lennon in the last cycle when he was starting for Gladbach. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's Gregg's favorite fullback because he's not a superhero, as Gregg calls them. He doesn't go up the field and put crosses in as much as Gregg would like. He doesn't have the speed or even the technical ability to contribute majorly to the attack.
If Joe Scally wasn't playing on Gladbach on a most regular basis, not as much this season, but still regular enough, I would gather that he would have left him off. Everything I've heard is that Berhalter has not been a fan of Joe Scally and is not a fan. Maybe he is now, but certainly he did not take kindly to the criticism of him in the media. Gregg hates that, but he really has no choice to bring him as the backup right back because there's nobody else. Who are you going to bring? Shaq Moore? Oh, wait. Yep. Going to bring Shaq Moore. My bad.
Two chances given up in 6 minutes of play.
Yeah.
Woo.
That's foul. Oh my God. Yeah.
The foul and also the getting bodied by Vini Jr. They were competing for a through ball, and all Vini had to do was nudge him, and he flew like a leaf in the wind, and Turner had to make a save.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He collapsed on the ground like a wet towel, and Vini turned and shot, and Turner made a very good save. I feel like it kind of went under the radar.
Turner might be one of the surprises too, by the way.
Something that was disappointing to me in the friendlies is that we didn't try something else at right back.
We did not.
It was really, and it's not like shocking, but it's just so disappointing because it's like we're not going to try anything else in case we get in a jam. Like it's going to be our first time.
Get injured or sent off. What do you think Gregg's going to do?
I know.
Shaq Moore.
He's going to start. Imagine we face Brazil or Colombia in the quarterfinal with Shaq Moore starting. Or he eventually goes, okay, maybe I can't do that. And he puts somebody else there who's never played there before.
And then we haven't done it at all.
And we haven't worked it at all, and it didn't work. And then, Gregg says, well, guys, we don't have anybody like, this Colombia midfielder who plays for Al Sadd. None of our guys have played in Saudi Arabia, and that's the level we hope to get to. No, last one, guys. Honest to God, where do we finish in this Copa America? What is the outcome?
Do you want me to be like an optimistic USMNT
No,
fan?
I want
you want me to be like a betting man.
Yeah,
Yeah, all right. I'm betting. Yeah, if I'm betting, I think we make the quarterfinals, and I think we lose. I mean, that's the safest bet, right? Is like we, and if I had to actually bet how it happens, I would bet that one of the first 2 games we take care of. Can't tell you which one, but I think we'll take care of one of them, like 2-0, 3-1, something like that. And then I think the other one we struggle in. Could even see us get a draw or a 1-0, something like that. And then I think we probably lose to Uruguay. And then I think we lose in the knockouts. I think I will give you the optimistic hope, just for anybody out there who wants it. My optimistic hope is that whatever that quarterfinal game is, Gregg can try and understand and replicate. It would happen because he tries to go back and do against Uruguay what he wants to do, and it fails. And there's pressure, and he all of a sudden goes, okay, I got to figure out a game plan that's different. And remember, I don't know if you guys probably know it, but maybe aren't remembering, and a lot of the viewers probably don't. No extra time in Copa. 90 minutes right to PKs. That's a massive advantage for us, right? If you force us to play 30 more minutes against Brazil the other night, we lose. Like, we just do. But if we could go right to PKs, now all of a sudden that opens a different door. So there is optimism that this shows that Gregg can figure out how to put a game plan together when his back's to the wall, and then all we need to do is hang on for 90 minutes and then get a result in PKs. But I wouldn't bet on that. Please don't bet on that. That is not how I would bet.
Is that the same for you, Derek? The same?
Yeah, that's pretty much the same. Although I have a worst case scenario in my head, I don't really want to talk about.
Okay, let me ask you this. This is a more interesting question. Which is more likely? We make a semifinal or we get grouped?
Grouped.
Yeah, that's if Vegas were putting out those odds, right? Like it's like grouped, minus 180 right there. It's like grouped is a 66%, thing, and semis is 33%. If those are the only two options, so
then let's do this. If we get knocked out in the quarterfinal, is that enough for you to fire Gregg?
For me, or for
it isn't,
in your opinion?
Oh, for me, I already want him gone, so that's not even a question. But is it enough for U.S. soccer? Is if we lose that quarter 5-1 and it's totally embarrassing, maybe. But no, I still think he keeps his job.
If he makes a semifinal,
all three of us would go against Gregg, right? Like that's, I mean, simply because I think all three of us see potential in the group that I think we have enough data that we understand that even with, a quarterfinal run, one good performance, one, bad performance, that's just more of the same, in my opinion. It's not really showing much. I need much more than that. Well, so what was your next question? Semifinal?
Well, if they make the semifinal, are you comfortable with, and they lose the semifinal and the third place game, which could potentially be Canada, by the way. Are you fine with keeping him till 2026?
Yeah, that's the problem. It's really not my decision. And so our show is never about Disneyland. When we do our show, we're like, what's the reality? If Gregg makes the semifinals, they will mail him roses. U.S. Soccer will mail him roses. BJ will, what was it? Is it Batson? JT Batson will, knock on his hotel door and offer a reach around. He will definitely be lauded as, our manager going forward. So we can continue to bark at the moon, but I don't think it's going to change the moon.
I'll go to Disneyland with you, Pete. So let's go to Disneyland together. Listen, if what I've been calling for is more consistency, like Gregg wouldn't have been my manager, never would have brought him back, all that stuff, right?
Right.
But what I have called for is more consistency. If he makes a semifinal run on this side of the bracket, that means he's probably gotten a result. I think there's different versions of it. I don't think semifinals is cookie cutter, and I don't think quarterfinals is cookie cutter, right? Like you could get smashed by Uruguay. Colombia could win the group, and you could figure out how to scrap against Colombia for 90 minutes and win in PKs, like I said, and then you get smashed in the semifinals. Like, it's not really showing me that. It's like, that was a nice one result against Colombia. Yeah. Good job tying it, but have we won a game against a better team yet? Can anybody we've got to go win, man. I get that the expectation can't be to win against these teams, but if you're 6 years in and you have 0 wins against better teams, that's 0. That's a crazy. He's got to go get a win. So I mean, and I guess he would have to win in PKs, but it's almost like a cheating win to me. It's like a draw. I don't know.
So I'll say this: if he absolutely smashes Bolivia, we look energetic. We break down the low block, cut them open. We smash Panama. We beat Uruguay. We top the group. We lose on a very iffy penalty to Brazil, 1-0 in the quarterfinal. That's showing some consistency over 4 games.
It is. Sure.
Is that enough?
I mean, not for me personally, but that's just because I don't believe in Gregg on a very deep level. But
yeah. No, and again, you can't take Copa America in a vacuum, is my opinion. The data on Gregg is what's he done over the last 6 years. And I think when you consider all of that data together, it's damning.
What I would have to see, and I agree with that, to make me go, all right, I can live with Gregg now. It's not something I like, but I can live with it going forward because he showed me that he's figured something out. That's what it would need to be. I would need to see Eureka, and then I would need to see Eureka repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. Yeah. Then I'm starting to say, maybe he's figured something out. Maybe BJ's giving the inspirational speeches.
Well, BJ
now.
might be in Nashville.
I know he might leave. This could be the worst thing that could happen.
He needs to make me feel like there is progress and like there's a path forward. And I don't know, much like a relationship, right? Where like you've been cheated on and your partner's done you dirty. It's like, is it possible to regain the trust? Like, is that really good 6-month period going to make me trust them again? Like, is Copa going to make me trust? So I don't know, like, hit me up in a couple weeks, Pete. Like, I'll let you know.
Oh, we will. We'll do one of these post-Copa. And it might be us
know.
calling for his head. So we'll see. Guys, thank you for hanging. Guys, go subscribe to the Straight Red Card if you have not already. Adam on Twitter is Stan_USMNT, right?
Yep.
All right, give him a follow. Thanks for hanging, guys. And smash the like button before you go. Appreciate it. We're going to get into Copa, and it's going to be a wild ride. Fingers crossed.
It'll be fun to watch, right? Either way, it's going to be fun.